This is Amend and Progress, your go-to podcast from Vodori for all things promotional material review. Get ready for actionable insights, valuable perspectives, and best practices to elevate your workflow and team morale.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vodori's podcast, Amend and Progress. I'm your host, Annalise, and today we're going to be talking about 4 macro-level topics that are driving Vodori's thinking in 2024. I'm delighted to be joined today by Vodori's CEO and co-founder, Scott Rovegno. Scott, welcome to your inaugural guest spot on Amend and Progress.
Thanks, Annalise. Delightful to be here with you and excited to talk about some of our thinking for 2024.
Awesome. Yes, I'm really excited to get into this with you and just provide a little bit more of our perspective and thinking for 2024 and beyond. Before we get there, I'm going to be starting something new on the podcast, and we're going to be doing a bit of a getting to know you rapid fire. So I have 3 questions. Hopefully they're relatively easy to answer, but just wanted to start with something maybe a little bit easier this morning. It is a Monday morning after all. So how does that sound?
Good. Let them rip. Let's see what we got.
All right. First question. What is your morning beverage of choice?
Oh, black coffee for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easy one.
Courses through my veins for the first hour of my morning. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Next, what is one productivity hack or best practice you use in your daily life?
Time blocking in my calendar, and I would say to-do lists. And I think the critical thing for me, I've learned over time, is that rigidity eventually breaks, right? So adaptability in whatever best practice I'm playing with at the time, I think being cognizant of the fact that we're human beings and we're always adjusting our styles. But yeah, I think forcing functions and premature, almost draft deliverable due dates, and that makes for a good week.
Okay, awesome. Finally, what is one book you think everyone should read?
Just one. I'll go. I could never answer with just one. I'll just go with the most recent book that I have read. It is Grit by Angela Duckworth. And it is a very interesting pathway through the psychology and habit forming aspects of building persistence in your life. And I think as a parent of an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old, as a colleague to many Vodorians, the angles through which to think about her thoughts and her research, extensive as it is, very intriguing, very intriguing. So yeah, I don't know if that's the only one I would ever recommend, but it's the most recent one, so I'm going to go with that.
Recency bias is very much allowed, and that's interesting. I haven't read that one, so I'm going to add it to my list. I'll add to the show notes as well in case folks are interested in taking a look at that. Okay, great. So we're going to talk about macro level topics today. We're going to talk about Vodori's perspective today. And I think, we've been sharing these with our 100 plus customers, our partner network, just sort of providing the backdrop on 2024 and what is driving our thinking as an organization. I wanted to bring you on because I think that these 4 theses are not just for those audiences. I think there are some industry-wide implications, right? And sort of what we're seeing with industry trends, where we think things are going. And so I thought it'd be a nice sort of macro level discussion to have with the Amend and Progress folks today. Let's talk about the what's feeding before we get into each 4 of these perspectives. What's fed this thinking? What data? What insights? Talk to me about sort of how we arrived at these 4 perspectives, I'll call them.
Yeah, I would say that more than anything, I think that we are very good listeners. And I think that the ability to observe, to listen, of course, and to incorporate the themes that rise above the chatter and form patterns in our daily and weekly and routines. At the end of the day, that is what's shaping our thinking. So I think customer feedback far and away, one of the bedrock elements of driving our priorities. I think the work that, frankly, you did with the benchmarks report, the conclusions reached, the uptake and excitement around the data that you and the team produced, even the surveys, I think that you accompanied this year's research with to further decorate, the numerical findings in the data. I think the data. Let's go with the data again. I think as we look across all of our customers, and some of our customers at this point have been with us for all of the last 6 years since we pivoted to being a software company. That longitudinal opportunity to study the performance of their team, of their content, of course, and the stories that that data tells us in terms of the next set of challenges. I would say that's a big factor. I think we're always influenced by industries outside of life sciences, and I think maybe even owing back to prior chapters of Vodori and prior chapters of our own careers, the ability to look across and see how other marketing, sales excellence, software, certainly content management, of course, how all of those capabilities are being brought to bear in industries outside of those that are most heavily regulated, like life sciences, certainly drawing inspiration from that. I think the other element that can't go unnoticed is just the regulatory environment and the almost competitor factors that are emerging. As I think everybody at this point knows, Viva and Salesforce are splitting apart. And I think at the end of the day, that presents such a wonderful opportunity for other CRM systems to compete for the industry's business. I'm a firm believer in competition is driving innovation, lowering costs. I think our industry suffers a lot from cost pressures. And so competition is a good thing. So, yeah, just a couple of things I think as we look across our customers, our interactions with our partners, our interactions with our board, even start to decorate some of the themes that feed into our thinking.
Wonderful. Thanks for that context. I think it's just helpful to understand where it comes from, just to provide a backdrop to the conversation today. Okay, thematically, the topics we're going to be talking about cover content, AI, best practices, and technology optionality. Let's start with content. I think the thinking here, and you'll be able to expand on this much more eloquently than I, but more content faster is not the end game. It's sort of where we've arrived in Vodori's thinking. And I think from a marketing or content perspective, this starts to creep into the quality over quantity discussion. So tell me more. Why have we arrived at this set of thinking, and how should organizations think about this concept to drive their own decision making?
Yeah, not a short answer, but let me try.
Yep.
I think one of the most significant aha moments in the history of Vodori, frankly, was back in, it was probably 2014, 2015. So this predated Pepper Flow, but was a chapter of Vodori where our software and our services were heavily focused on digital content and web content management. And our work with our customers at that time, in many ways, addressed some of the same opportunities and challenges that Pepperflow and our content management systems do today. The speed and efficiency and the regularity with which content can be approved and efficiently sent out to market. So this is 2014, and we had several thousand assets that were approved for this particular customer, and this was approximately January to June kind of timeframe. And in studying the data, we realized that we were able to help them go from, it was upwards of 6 weeks to get content approved down to less than 7 days. So like 6.5 on average, often leading up to conferences even faster than that. The other thing that occurred, and I don't remember the numbers exactly and precisely at this point, but the throughput in a single month went from 30, 40 pieces to well over 100 in the span of just that 6 months. And on the surface, we were celebrating, right? No increase in staff, no dramatic, nights and weekends to make all of this occur. It truly was the triangulation of best practices, good training, good software, and a shared understanding of the objectives. However, in the background, we were tracking the publish and views and downloads of just about all of the pieces of content, even content that went to a print vendor. We were able to track how many times the sales team requested hard copies be sent to them. And there was this enormous drop off in usage. So thousands of pieces of content were sent out to market, and maybe a couple dozen were highly utilized. The vast majority were used once, or in some cases, not at all for 6 months. And let's not forget that all of this content is being re-reviewed per SOPs once every year or every 2 years. And it dawned on us, of course, that as soon as you remove the friction of the approval process, you end up with way more content going through as a result of that, which again, on the surface is good. However, it puts the burden back on the commercial teams to think critically about what is the message, what is the strategy for that message, to whom is it aimed, through which channels, et cetera. And so I think we've been all, this is not unique to Vodori, of course, but I'm just sharing, I think, the epiphany we had many, many years ago. It is a difficult challenge. It is exciting in January to set goals around campaigns for the year and the agencies you will hire and the content that will go to market and the significant impact it will have on commercial results. I'm here to tell you that that's not always the case. So this is within Vodori. We've also seen, I think we've all seen this, again, not unique to Vodori, plenty of third-party research indicating that physicians, for example, are not exactly impressed with a lot of the content that's coming out. So overload, the trust in the content is low, the quality of the content per their feedback is not as high as it should be. So I think we face a real significant challenge as we continue to look for ways to speed up this process. We want to use more and more advanced technology to make the process as efficient and as hands-off as possible. And at the end of the day, the recipients are saying no mas, right? So I think more content faster, to use the wording we've been talking a lot about, is absolutely not the end game. And over the next several quarters, we're putting significant investment into the prerequisite capabilities to really be in a position to draw the data back from all of the different channels that content went, and to be able to determine which content is actually being used. Let's not talk about whether or not it's effective. Let's just talk about whether or not it's being used as a leading indicator for whether or not it's effective. And whether the post went to LinkedIn or to a physician-centered social media channel or to a website or even back to that print vendor example, we need to be able to aggregate all that data back and tell the story to our commercial colleagues and to help them think through what their content needs to look like next. So yeah, a lot of investment over the next several quarters, really the next several years, helping organizations pivot from the efficiency of the process now to the effectiveness of the content.
Mm-hmm. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yes.
And the data should be driving the decisions around the content, both from a usage perspective and also if your sales team isn't even accessing it, there's a red flag or an indicator to drive, okay, maybe we need to revisit what type of content we're serving up to that audience.
Yep. Yes. And I think, the utopian North Star for us has always been, and we've done this on one-off basis in point in time studies, but the ability to append sales data, prescription data to the content. A number of our customers sell capital equipment to large labs and hospitals. And that 2-year sales cycle and the myriad different pieces of tools and educational pieces and videos and so on that are used throughout that sales cycle, wouldn't it be great to know which of those pieces were actually used in the deals that closed and that the commercial team had high praise for? So that feedback loop, direct and indirect, as a centerpiece for the enabling technology is essential. Yeah, I think a lot of companies still do need to focus on this first prereq, efficiency of the process, but that's only step one of at least a 2-step process to become a more agile and impactful commercial organization.
Yep. Okay. That's excellent. Let's pivot. We're going to talk about AI next.
Okay.
Now, we could spend so much time here. Buzzy word, everyone's talking about it. I think companies are almost under pressure to have a perspective on this.
Yep.
Knowing we could spend a whole episode on AI, let's maybe keep it to high level or the things that you think are most salient. What is Vodori's perspective on AI? And maybe we can tie it more to how we think it's going to show up in material review.
Yep. Great question, and certainly many different facets to it. We're excited as much as anybody else is in the potential for harnessing the technology and to further augment the humans who are doing this critical work. And I say it that way because I think it is unrealistic in the next 10 years to imagine a world where the software displaces people. I just don't think regulatory bodies, organizations, even as software purveyors, that is the end goal. The goal is to complement the human being. And so we'll look for use cases that augment the human beings. I think the other element that's paramount is the utility and usability of these capabilities. Um, at Vodori, as you well know, we place an enormous premium on the user experience of the whole thing, of the software, of course, but also in terms of how our customers and their users interact with Vodori as a company. And so, as we think about employing advanced technologies to continue to shave off friction pieces of this review process, it will be done through that prism of really brilliant, thoughtful, creative user experiences that uh, don't make this such a jumpy process of moving from one set of widgets to another set of widgets to another set of widgets. So the user experience will be paramount. I think trust is such a huge, huge thing. And we've been talking about this with customers as we've been communicating our 3-year long range plan updates. Trust is the kind of thing that takes you a long time to build up, right? It is a series of interactions of reliable, predictable follow through, of being and doing and acting just as you said you would. And I think the reverse of that is the situation where trust is lost. It takes a single incident to breach that asset, if you will, and to eliminate the trust that you've built up. And so, for us in the software world, in particular in the use case that we are today centered on, everything we do will be putting trust at the center of our strategy, of the technology, of the configurability of it. And so I think I would go back to, again, some of the research that you did as part of the benchmarks reporting. A number of our customers have policies, or if not full on policies, unwritten guidance that there is a moratorium on this technology internally uh, for obvious reasons that we're all aware of. So we'll be thoughtful, we'll be very strategic. We will employ the same user centric approach we always have, and it will start and stop with trust as the this concrete and steel upon which it is all built. So we'll be very excited. I think by the end of this year will be the first times our customers start to leverage the next set of capabilities that we're building around AI, and we'll continue from there. We don't see this as a race. We don't see this as the kind of thing where we have to put it on our homepage in order to convince our customers that we're being mindful of modern technology. They know that already. And instead, I think, again, approaching this with a very user-centered and trust-centered mindset will be the correct approach.
Mm-hmm. A common mantra or topic that's shown up on this podcast in conversations with Anne or other Vodorians, the process is made of humans. And so I certainly see that showing up a little bit in our perspective of it is a process made of humans. And so sort of these augmenting ways of AI or, supporting humans in making good judgment, I think is showing up a little bit here and certainly harkens back to all the things that we've talked about so far. And in just this concept of don't forget that it's
Yes, I
that
think
makes
that's
it a process.
I think that's a brilliant way to summarize and amplify the point. I think an end goal or an end state, perhaps, where software creates the content, software automatically approves the content, software automatically publishes the content to some unsuspecting human or not, some other piece of software that's on the receiving end of it. Like, I'm sorry, that's just not how trust and relationships are built.
Yep.
And I still firmly believe, and I think we all do at Vodori, that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to create a medium through which human beings can trade value. And whether that's a prescription, advising and educating a patient, a laboratorian understanding limits of sensitivity and detection of a new test, you name it. to automate that entirety of that education process through software is a failed charter, in my view. And so,
Mhm.
yes, again, I think we'll be looking for ways for software to complement and assist, but not to take over the role of the human relationship development. We're not trying to create relationships between computers. We're trying to create relationships between people.
Yes, very important reminder. And actually perfectly feeds into sort of this next topic around, speaking of humans, best practices.
Yes.
This concept of best practices is truly a helix of the Vodori DNA. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but it's a really core tenet of sort of what we do and what we provide. We talk about types of best practices all the time on the podcast without needing to go into many specific best practices. I think what would be more interesting for me to hear from you on is why? Why do we care so much about best practices, and why do we talk about it day in and day out with our customers?
Yeah, I think, the simple answer is that software can't do all of this work by itself.
Yeah.
And the reverse is also true. When it is a bad process or even a bad piece of technology, we've had countless prospective customers teach us that the human beings avoid the process altogether, right? And so bad review processes beget non-compliance just by virtue of the human beings trying to avoid the friction of that.
Yep.
So I think, yes, we need to think thoughtfully and be creative in the employment of software to augment the humans. But so much of this boils down to how those human beings interact with the software. The best practices that, frankly, even sit before the software is engaged.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have we heard customers complain about poorly conceived of content hitting the review process too
Yep.
late in the conceptualization endeavors? Just a simple thing where a concept review and, frankly, a better culture of collaboration within the commercial and approval teams long before it ever gets to the MLR review process pays massive dividends in creating thoughtful, creative, persuasive content, but also compliant content
Mm-hmm.
that will sail through the review process. So yes, I think we spend a good amount of time advising and assisting our customers with configuration changes to the platform to make it as user friendly and as efficient as possible. Gosh, a lot of those recommendations and elements of advice center around just shaping human beings and their behaviors around or even ahead of the software process itself.
Yep. We often talk about the only constant is change in the material review process. And so I think best practices come into play there, because certainly you'll have to employ different ways of thinking and working as your business evolves and changes. And so it's just another example, or I think backdrop to this concept of we expect the process to be changing. And so best practices play a pretty critical role in facilitating that change.
They do, and I think if you widen it out, we could call it collaboration best practices.
Yep.
We need to find ways to create a culture where the creators and the ideators have the ability to propose, next generation good ideas in an efficient manner, in a cost-effective manner, where feedback can be collected early and the ideas and the language to be used can be shaped early when it's least expensive to make those updates. And to your point on change is a constant. The culture that underpins the way that team operates, it has to be evergreen. It has to be one that anticipates the fact that that review person that I love working with, he or she may take a new position in the next 2 years. And so just thinking about how we guide customers to think about this content approval process and to coach the human beings to collaborate thoughtfully and more effectively with one another. Yes, of course, there's software in there, but that's not the main thing. And so making sure that we don't lose sight of that and that our perspective and our customers' perspective respects the fact that software can't solve all of this. And so, treat the human first.
Yep. Okay. Finally, I'm sitting with a CEO of a technology company. Let's talk about technology optionality.
Yes.
We're
Okay.
very intentional in our perspective here. And I think, you'll be able to speak to this, but can you just even break open what we mean by technology optionality and then talk about the benefits of that?
Let's link it back to competition.
Great.
I think that the world of commercial software in any industry is incredibly incredibly fast paced. We've all seen those slides that attempt to summarize by category within MarTech, right? Sales and marketing technology, the hundreds of different logos that comprise the leaders in each of those different functional areas, from campaign management to CRM to analytics, you name it. And I think having grown up in that commercialization software world, I think that that's awesome. And I think brand managers and marketing leaders should have the ability to select the software that makes the most sense for their requirements, their budget, for their use case. And the best solution to meet those requirements should be, therefore, permissible and selective, which means, therefore, that we have to be ambidextrous and anticipate the fact that it's one CRM in one customer, another CRM in another customer. The sales enablement world is incredibly well populated with really outstanding platforms for content delivery to sales reps. If we were to pick 25 of our customers, we would probably find 7 or 8 different sales enablement platforms within. So the ability to allow those customers to select the best solutions for them and then guarantee to them that we can create and leverage trusted integrations and connectors to those platforms, we're driving competition into the arena, which is a good thing. We're offering optionality and choice to the buyers and to the users, which is outstanding. And I think it's an interesting time in software right now. There are a lot of big name companies that are being held to task by the European Union and now increasingly in the US Department of Justice for creating very proprietary closed systems. In my view, proprietary and closed reminds me of, when I got my start in software, and that was a thing. Well, then you had open source and commercial open source and interoperability and standards bodies that were developed to ensure interoperability across these massive industry-changing platforms. And so that, for me, is the belief system that I abide by. I think interoperability is a core requirement to creating a best-in-class environment and allowing each brand team to select the software that makes the most sense for them.
No organization is the same, though, for how could we possibly imagine that the technology from organization to organization needs to be the same?
Correct. And yeah. I think to the next startup who has uncovered an unmet need somewhere in this content creation, approval, dissemination, analytics, review, etc., go and create that solution and feel confident that the industry will select that platform because of its merits, and that we, as part of that overall ecosystem and environment, will be able to connect to it and send data to and pull data back from it and create a higher value solution for everybody.
Wonderful. Okay. That's what I had to cover. What didn't we cover that you would want to leave the listeners with, or any last parting words?
I think 2024 compared to 2023, it has been palpably elevated in terms of customer confidence in investing in their own futures. I think we've all watched the capital markets react to a number of different significant financings, even in just the first quarter here. I think on balance, we're all cautiously optimistic that the economy is moving off its bottom and portends of more productive growth and predictable growth over the next several quarters. To that, I say, let's go. Let's set goals for this year, and in the case of Vodori, over the next 3 years. Let's confidently embrace and pursue those goals, knowing that optionality in the market and growth in the market are good for all of us, and hopefully, therefore, good for patients in the end as new therapies, new tests, new medical devices come to market. We look forward to the opportunity to help you educate the market that those products are now available.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much for your time today. This was a wonderful conversation. Just appreciate you and look forward to the next time you join us on the podcast.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to everyone, please, the conversation doesn't stop here. Make sure to follow Vodori on LinkedIn for updates on upcoming episodes. Join in on the conversation. We would love to hear questions about what we're talking about or even ideas for new episodes. You can subscribe to Amend and Progress on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Until next time, this is Annalise signing off from Amend and Progress. Have a fantastic day.